Let's jump into Module 7 on cash and receivables. Cash has got to be my favorite asset in the world, and receivables has got to be my least favorite asset in the world. Cash, of course, currency, money, but we'll learn some more complex things around cash. Cash, what is cash and what isn't cash is actually can be a tricky question, surprisingly. And receivables, the reason I say it's my least favorite asset, receivables means somebody owes me money. I hate it when people owe me money. Then you got to collect, you got to chase. And there's all sorts of problems and challenges collecting and chasing. So let's discuss the big cash issue of the day. And the thing is, we have cash, and cash is obviously currency, like literally physical bills. You can imagine a pile of money or coins, that's cash, but also money in a checking or savings account, that is also cash. Where we jump in intermediate accounting is we look at things that are kind of cash, but not really close to cash. Cash equivalents, we'll look at something called restricted cash, and then we'll look at things that are kind of cash, but they're not. And so where do we draw the line, right? Between what's cash equivalent, what's none of the above. It can be a fuzzy line, and I'll try to draw sort of bright red ink around them with you. So actually, let me just sort of introduce the four categories here. We've got cash, which, as I've said, currency, paper money, coins, checking account, saving account balances, those are all cash. Cash equivalents, you find these on big company balance sheets typically. If you've got lots of money, something sensible to do is to put it in short-term, very short-term investments, under 90-day maturity investments, and very safe investments like government T-bills, things like this. They call them money market funds. So Apple, this is the company I was showing you earlier, has, now this number is funny. It says $35,934 in cash. This is in millions. So add 6 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is $35 billion in cash on Apple's balance sheet right now. 35 billion with a B. So Apple doesn't need to earn a lot of money on this cash for it to be substantial. If Apple earned 1% return on this, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. And so big companies with big balance sheets, they're looking to just squeeze out 1% or 2% extra from their cash. And one way they do it is they invest it in very short-term, very liquid investments that us accountants say, you know what, that's close enough to cash. If Apple starts to run out of money, they're not going to, but if they start to run out of money, they can dip into that pool, and we will consider that close enough to cash to be cash. And the key is it's safe investment that matures in 90 days or less. We call that a cash equivalent. So that's the concept of a cash equivalent. It's very short-term investments, very liquid investments that if the company's in trouble and they need money, they'll have this. It's ready to go, right? So that's a cash equivalent. And why do they do it? Well, again, if they're just making a couple percent, it can be millions and millions of dollars, and companies would like to do that. Restricted cash is an interesting one. Let's say we borrow money and our lender says you have to keep a minimum balance in your savings account of $10,000. We're not in Apple land anymore. We're in human land here. The bank says you got to keep a minimum account balance of $10,000. That's a rule of this loan. So that cash is kind of, as a shareholder, not really cash because it's not spendable, right? A key part of cash is you can spend it relatively soon. You can access it relatively soon. So if you have cash that's tied up in that way, we categorize it differently. It doesn't sit with cash. It's in its own category called restricted cash. It's cash with some strings attached. So we'll look at some examples of that. The key one, though, is like terms and conditions on a loan. Could be some union contract where they say you have to set aside this amount for your payroll or for some other amount for employee benefits. And even though it's sitting in a checking account of ours or a savings account, we can't touch it like normal cash, even though it is cash. So that's called restricted cash. The final category is stuff that's not cash, but kind of looks like cash. So the key example in this year would be crypto assets. Think of Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. It's not cash, but it has a lot of characteristics that make it similar to cash, it's a different category. Another example where you might think cash is like a customer comes in and they give you a check dated for 2 weeks from now. Well, normally you receive a check, you debit cash. When a client gives you a check that's dated in the future, it's not cash, it's receivable. It will become cash when, the check clears and cashes, but when they hand you the check with a future date, it is not cash now. So there's all kinds of things that kind of look like cash, but they're not cash. So those are key cash categories we'll explore this chapter, but that's not the meat of the chapter. The meat of chapter 7 is receivables. And the key question around receivables is, how much is receivable? So the first example is, let's just say we put on a sale 25% off. So we're selling a $100 item. It's marked down 25%. The customer says, I'll take it, right? Well, the amount receivable is $75. I think that's easy. I think that's straightforward. And I think it's pretty obvious. The discounts of that nature, it's obvious. I banged my table here. It's obvious. It's obvious that it's 25% off. It's obvious that the receivable is $75. Where it becomes less obvious is other types of discounts, like early payment discounts. And I hope you remember this little abbreviation, 210 N30 net 30 means my client gets a 2% discount, an additional 2% off if they pay within 10 days. And the idea is I want to collect. It makes it easier for me to collect. Otherwise, the bill's due in 30. Well, the general rule we would account for that under is we would say, okay, let's just say ignore the 25% off. Let's just say it's a $100 receivable and 210 net 30 are the terms. The normal rule of thumb is right away we would just call it a $100 AR. And then if they get the discount, we'll deal with it at that time. But some companies, they have clients that just always take the discount because taking the discount's smart. So they have smart clients. So their clients all take the discount all the time. They might say, well, wait, why don't I just call this a $98 receivable? Why do I go through the dance of going, well, it's $100 receivable, and then 5 days from now or 10 days from now when they pay, it's, I only got 98. A lot of companies can say, well, if it's reasonably predictable that everybody's taking the 2% discount, I only have a $98 receivable, and I should call it that from day one. So how much is receivable? I made a $100 sale, but there's only a $98 receivable there. Companies can choose one way or the other. Most commonly, they'll just call it a $100 receivable and deal with a discount if and when it happens, but you certainly can call it a $98 receivable on day one, and we'll look at examples of that this chapter. More examples. Sales returns. All right, I just bought a pair of shoes. They didn't fit well. I bought them online. I sent them back. This company's got to get a lot of returns, right? If you're a clothing company and the clothing doesn't fit well, I'm sure they get stuff sent back fairly often. Well, how do I account for that, right? Is it receivable when I'm expecting returns? Do I have to wait for a return period to end? Easy for me to say. How do I deal with the volume of returns? Let's say it's 10% of my products get returned pretty consistently. How do I cope with that? And we'll learn how to do the accounting around returns. Another issue around the value of receivables is collectibility. So let's say there's not been a discount. There's no early payment discount. I don't have to worry about returns with this product. There's nobody returns it. Collectability is still an issue. Some of my customers will go bankrupt. Some of them will dispute the bill. I have to deal with that, right? Receivables are a pain in the neck for that reason. You're chasing somebody looking for money and not everybody pays. So how do I deal with the value of my receivables when some percentage of those receivables are uncollectible? We'll look at that. And that's actually something from intro accounting. We'll revisit it in our intermediate accounting class here. The final topic will be notes. And again, notes is something we looked at in intro accounting, notes receivable. In intro accounting, we said, somebody borrows some money, we give them cash, and then, 6 months later, they pay us back with some interest. The issue here is that we'll explore in intermediate accounting is, what if we lend them some money and they're not going to pay us back for like 5 years? Well, all of a sudden, the time value of money starts to matter. Stuff we talked about in chapter 3, where we're going to have to discount those future cash flows to figure out how much That's the million-dollar question with receivables. How much is my receivable worth? If they're going to give me $10,000 5 years from now, how much is that worth today? Well, that's where time value of money, math of finance comes into play, and it's going to come into play this chapter. This is one of my favorite chapters because cash is one of my favorite assets. Even though I hate receivables, I don't mind accounting for them. So lots of challenges lie ahead. The best way to learn accounting, though, is to do the problems. And I'm sure I've got a problem linked right now. It's going to flash up on the screen in about 5 seconds. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye for now. The next video in our series is right up here. And if you want a supercut of all of the videos in this series, that's the one down below.